Today's video is brought to you by bhedesigns.com. They make the beautiful handmade wooden flags that are right behind me. So if you want one for yourself or for someone else, visit their link in the description box below. How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about Oakland, California, handing out $500 per month for up to 600 families in their city via lottery system. Now, there's a lot we got to quote unquote unpack here, as the cool kids would say. First things first, there are certain criteria you must meet in order to get the money, okay? There's two main things you got to do or be to get the money. First thing, you must be considered low income in Oakland, which in that city means as a household, husband, wife, kids, you must make less than $59,000 a year. Now, I'm not really sure how that kind of money is considered low income, but it is California, where everything's ridiculously high. Houses are like $600,000 in the hood, so I kind of understand, but that's a different story, and I digress. First thing, like I said, you must be considered low income. The second thing is you can't be white. That's right, I said it. This is 2021. You have a city organized thing. I'll talk about that in a minute. You cannot be white. You must be considered BIPOC. Now, what does that mean? I said it before on the channel, but I said one more again for the audience. Black, indigenous people of color, BIPOC. So rather than just saying blacks or Hispanics or Asians or the more outdated kind of non-woke term, colored people, or the newer woke term, people of color, which is the same thing. Rather than saying those, you got to say BIPOC, right? Which basically at the end of the day means non-white person, okay? You will be able to get the $500. Now, the mayor has a bunch of excuses for this. She said, first of all, okay, most of the white families that come into Oakland are not from there and they got a bunch of money. Basically tech workers, right? They live in Oakland. They may even work in Oakland and they go to San Francisco, San Jose, whatever. They get the money from there, right? The Apple, the Google, etc. But according to a study that they did to do this whole $500 a month thing, 8% of Oakland is poor white, okay? Or 8% of the whites in Oakland are poor or something like that. Basically, there's about 10,000 people and or families that are white and poor, which means I'm talking about below the federal poverty line, making less than $12,000 a year. So actually like in poverty. And there's probably more than that make below the 60 grand threshold that you have to get the $500 a month. But that's the rationale. Now, my thing is, okay, since you're saying that white folks come in there and they already have money from tech, I mean, are they the only ones that have money from tech? Surely there are plenty of black folks that have money from tech that live in Oakland that are not from there originally. Same thing with Asians. There's a lot of Asians in Silicon Valley that live in Oakland. They have money that come from somewhere else. All right. A lot of Indians from India, Chinese from China, like they just came immediately straight from over there and got plenty of money. So is it a money thing or is it a race thing? All right. It is obviously a race thing. It's a racist thing. Now, the second thing that the mayor said, and then that some would say to defend this, is that it's privately funded. Okay. So although the program is done by the city, it's going to be doled out by the city. It's a privately funded thing. A lot of rich people, probably mostly white, different story. A lot of rich people have given privately to this fund. However, it's being done by the city. It's not just like, okay, you have a private group just come to your house and say, here's some money. It's going to be done by the city. On top of other welfare benefits, you got EBT, WIC, TANF, Section 8, food stamps, all of that. You got all these other welfare benefits, and then here's another $500 on top of that just because. No strings attached. So it's not quite like the program I covered out there, where was that, in Chicago, that area, and in the northern part, whatever that city is. You guys know what I'm talking about, and let me know where that is in the comments. But it's still racist, obviously. And also, my thing is, how are you going to prove who is a BIPOC person and who isn't? I just saw a story today that said Ronda Rousey, the MMA fighter, she's white, obviously, clearly white, but her great-grandfather was like, he was black or mixed black or something like that. He was a so-called BIPOC person. So at what point are you considered to not be BIPOC? And it's so broad, BIPOC, person of color. At what point are you considered not to be a person of color? How about Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren? She said she's Native American with 1,024th% of her DNA Native. Okay, so she's 99.999% white, but that 0.1 is she a person of color at that point? I mean, are we going to be doing DNA tests to get this money delivered? Must you be obviously a BIPOC or not really white? How about if Sean King lived out there? Would he get this money? If he was low income, which he's not because he's getting that BLM money, but that's a different story. How about Rachel Dolezal? She's out there not too far from Oakland. She's out there like Spokane, Washington or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. So if she moved to Oakland, first of all, because they were talking about the rich whites that moved to Oakland that aren't really privy to it, that don't need it, or white people in general, because a lot of them are rich. Even the poor whites don't need it, all right? What if she came out there and identified as black? I mean, Oakland is a super liberal place, right? So if you can identify as male when you're female and female when you're male, why can't you identify as black or BIPOC? You know what? Rather than being black right now, you know what I identify as? I identify as every race. And you can't say that I'm a liar. And if I'm white, I do the same thing. I identify as all races. I identify as BIPOC, white, whatever. I'm the universal human being. So I want white privilege. I want black privilege. I want Asian privilege. I want all of that. And you can't tell me that I'm not, because if you do, then you're a bigot. But seriously, how are you really going to be able to determine this? This is one of the issues reparations kind of brings up, because they say, okay, if you're black, you're entitled to X, Y, and Z. Well, all right. What if your ancestors weren't here during slavery? And how are we going to be able to determine that? A lot of people can't really trace back past their dad, granddad. So how are you going to trace back all the way to the boat? What if you have white DNA, which most black Americans do, honestly? What if you have white DNA in you? I think the most you're going to get out of black Americans as far as African DNA is like 80%. That's probably tops. You have some that come from Africa, but I'm talking about people that have been here for a long time. They got roots all the way back to the boat. 80% black DNA probably going to be your max. So what about that 20% white DNA? They may have been a slave owner. So does that not really count? When you're talking about being able to get monies back, it's very confusing. Like I said before, if you were going to have reparations for slavery, it should have happened at that time. You were able to identify the former slave and the former slave owner. Okay, it should have happened back then. 40 acres and the mule should happen back then, but it didn't. So now it is what it is. You can't retroactively go back and change it because everybody's dead from that particular point in time. And if you do anything right now, it'll come out of your own money, generally, talking about reparations. But going back to Oakland, this is just unnecessary. $500 for what? Why? That money should get spent on improving Oakland. Have you seen Oakland recently? Like a lot of these low-income areas, I'm not sure about the higher-income areas, but the low-income areas, you're talking about third world country. I was looking at some of these videos where they go through certain neighborhoods at night or different times of the day, and they show how it looks. Oakland, San Francisco, LA, the worst. I was completely shocked. You know, I've seen, like, you're talking about worse than South Bronx in the 70s. It looked like a war zone or just third world country. So rather than just spending more and more money on people that's not really going anywhere, while you having a higher cost of living, higher taxes, and you're not improving everything, how about lower some of those costs, lower some of those taxes, and improve your city? Because right now it's looking pretty bad. It's looking very bad. Okay? But as I close, I want to say this. It's okay to be racist, I suppose, when whites are involved. Okay, if it's about a white person, you can be racist against a white person, but a so-called BIPOC, colored person of color, whatever you want to call it, same thing, then all of a sudden it's not okay. But at the same time, when you're trying to be racist against whites and not racist against so-called BIPOC, you're racist. If you're going to get the money straight to so-called BIPOC, that means that we need it more than anyone else. That means, if you are a black person, Asian or whatever, that means you just have a predisposition to being poor and to being in poverty. You need this money. But the whites, they're doing great. They are supreme. They are superior. Sounds kind of familiar, but anyway, whites are supreme. They're superior. They got money. They don't need it. You're ignoring all the poor whites that exist. Do you know that there are more poor whites in this country than there are blacks in total, rich, poor, and everything in between? But for some reason, this whole thing about poverty and all this and that is focusing on the so-called minorities rather than everyone. If you want to improve America, if you want to improve life for those that are in poverty, you got to have policies on the books that make life a little bit easier to live. All right. I'm not saying you're going to have your life solved by politicians and stuff like that. Of course not. But it doesn't make sense to be in a place like Oakland, California, living in abject poverty, and then on top of that, say, hey, okay, let's have a high minimum wage, high taxes. You're going to make life more expensive for those that are in poverty. Why? Make things cheaper, make things easier to access so you're able to get to a place where you're able to have success and get things rocking and rolling. But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? How do you feel about this program? Is it racist to hand out monies to so-called BIPOC peoples and not anyone else, not the white people? And that's your viewpoint. Let me know why in the comments below. Do you feel how I feel? Why I say this program shouldn't even exist. All this welfare shouldn't even exist. And what they also do in Oakland, California, and other parts of the country, San Fran especially also, which is right there next to Oakland, what they're doing is subsidizing homelessness and poverty. You're giving dope fiends needles, places to shoot their drugs. You're not even arresting anybody for these kinds of things that should be arrested. And the result is just a poor city, more crime, more violence, just a bad place to live. Okay, these things are the actual problems. You're giving out money from these rich people to just say, hey, you know what? I did my part. I'm giving out money. I feel good. Black Lives Matter, right? Meanwhile, you got dope fiends in the street dying, HIV, AIDS, or whatever, and it's fine. You put more money to that, you're gonna have more of it. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I gotta say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.